It didn't take long to convince the others. Maddie was with us immediately, Andrew and Hunter joining us as well. Quinn was reluctant, but he had no choice. Within 15 minutes, we were packed back inside the RV, heading north in their direction. We drove and we drove, speeding down the road as fast as we could. Rarely did we see any other cars pass us by, which was a good idea since we were about 10 over the speed limit. About halfway there, we saw their car stop. According to his map, they were outside a warehouse close to the docks. I don't even know. I can't stop thinking about her. What they're gonna do. What they could do. I just want to take her away from all this and be safe, I told Spencer, venting to him as he played on his game buddy. I just don't want her to get hurt.
Yeah, I feel ya. If something ever happened to Maddie, I'd kill whoever was responsible.
You, kill someone. Not trying to be mean, but I doubt you're capable of that, I told him.
If I had a gun?
He asked. I shook my head. Nope, you need the mental capability to take a life. Something you definitely don't have.
Then why does Andrew have it?
I shrugged. I don't know, because he's a fucking psychopath?
Dude, you don't want to be like Andrew.
He told me. Why not? I asked him. He's emo, but he's not that bad.
I mean, don't hide your emotions. Andrew tries to push away anyone that tries to get close and make it seem like he cares for nobody. I mean, obviously he does, or else he wouldn't have spent so much time hollowing out that knife so he could make sure you're safe. Kind of like an overprotective mom. Or a stalker.
An empty Coke can then flew across the room from the driver's seat, nailing Spencer on the head. He whined, rubbing his head before returning to playing Mystery Dungeon on his game buddy. I then checked my revolver, inserting a handful of loose 9mm bullets from the pocket inside my jacket. I holstered my revolver afterwards and watched as Hunter stood up and opened the window.
Welcome to Detroit, Muffin Sacks!
Hunter shouted. Tall buildings surrounded the streets, lit up by spotlights shooting into the sky. Billboards sat atop nearby warehouses, displaying advertisements for the world to see. Cars blared on the highway, and we heard the crack of the bat from the nearby baseball stadium. You guys remember the trip we took a few years ago? I said, as I admired the baseball stadium. Maddie nodded.
Yeah, I remember. Louise caught a ball that day.
Hunter pointed out the window at a theater near the baseball stadium.
Hey Spence, that's where we saw the play, right? I remember because you got bored and snuck off to watch that Dora play.
Spencer turned red in embarrassment.
Okay, you try watching Macbeth without falling asleep. It's sad when Dora the Explorer of all people is more entertaining than you.
Finally, we began to pull into a large set of warehouses near the water. They were right next to Lake St. Clair, which led into Lake Hudson, and was a direct route to Canada. After turning off the RV, Hunter grabbed a formerly empty duffel bag off the floor. He unzipped it as we all gathered around, revealing a pile of guns we had taken from the gang. Several pistols, a few makeshift submachine guns, and 2 semi-auto assault rifles.
An M4A1?
Andrew asked as he picked up a heavy black rifle.
This is military grade. Who are these people?
I don't know. Maybe they have a website.
Spencer suggested. Check later. For now, everyone grab a weapon and enough ammo. Let's get in and get out without any trouble, I told them. One by one, we began picking out weapons. Quinn handed Isabel a pistol, assuring her it would be fine. I kept my revolver, but also picked up a large machine gun I recognized as a P90, and Luis's hunting rifle. Andrew then led the march out of the RV, everyone following him outside, but me. I stopped, turning to look at the kids. I knelt down in front of Axel, telling him sternly, "Both of you stay here. Do not leave the RV under any circumstances. And if we don't come back, call the police, okay?"
When are you coming back?
Axel asked. I grabbed his shoulder and shot him a smile. "I'll be back."
But
I smiled at him before standing up, hopping out of the RV, and shutting the door behind me. I couldn't give him an answer. We spread out, Hunter on one side and Andrew on the other, while I took the lead, holding up my revolver and looking around for anyone guarding. However, our stealthy infiltration was met with a cry coming from inside. We all turned to look at the dirty glass window on the side of the warehouse, hearing the muffled sound of a girl crying. Space.
Hey, hands up!
We turned to see a silver-haired girl standing nearby, pointing her gun at us. Her hands were shaking, and I could tell she was unsure.
Weapons down. You try anything, and I order them to kill your friend.
The girl told us. The 8 of us began to raise our hands, but Hunter came to the rescue. He grabbed the girl by the shoulder and ran his blade through her neck, slitting the young girl's throat and pushing her body to the ground. She choked out a few last words before her body became limp.
Now that that's taken care of, let's go.
Hunter told us. Spencer, Andrew, and I stood on one side of the door, while Hunter, Maddie, Isabel, and Quinn stood on the other. I took a peek through the window, seeing 2 figures walking while holding guns.
I'll go first. You guys come behind. Don't shoot unless you absolutely have to. We need the element of surprise, but if they do, I'll cover you.
Hunter whispered to us. We all nodded at once, and Quinn slowly pulled open the handle. He creaked it open, and I prepared to shoot. My heart was racing. I felt like I couldn't breathe. We were outnumbered and outgunned. If this went bad, Space could end up dead. And so could the rest of us. Boxes and crates filled the place, with small maze-like pathways formed between them. We couldn't see Space, nor any gang members either. There were 2 paths through the boxes, one going left and the other going right.
I'll go right. You go left,
said Andrew. He held his gun up as he walked around the corner. Hunter followed him closely behind, and the rest of us walked the other way. Isabel stood behind Quinn, holding a black handgun. When we turned the corner, we saw it. A man was standing there, holding his rifle and whistling quietly. Luckily, he had his back to us. Quinn stepped forward and pistol-whipped the man. Isabel caught his body, lowering him down quietly so he didn't make any noise. Spencer, Maddie, and I crept past with our weapons drawn, turning around a corner without looking. That proved to be a grave mistake, as we were put right in the line of fire. Space was sitting against the wall, a white zip tie binding her hands. She had a white cloth over her mouth, and there was blood trickling down her head from a gash on her forehead. Tears stained her face, and there was another cut going across her wrist. When she saw us, her eyes widened, just like the guards. One wore a long black jacket and had a small SMG. His face was concealed with a black hood and a black visor over his eyes. The other was a man wearing a white sleeveless hoodie and ripped jeans, and had short brown hair. He had on a pair of sunglasses, as well as his hands containing a Remington 870 shotgun. The same man who had tackled me in the forest. The one who let me live. They both pointed their guns at us, and slowly we began to put our hands up. The one in black spoke up.
She told us you'd be coming. We didn't actually believe her.
We aren't here to hurt anyone, I lied. We just want our friend back. Please.
Please? Please? Are you seriously asking me to just give up our new toy because you said please?
The man exclaimed. My pleading face then turned to an angry one. All right then, how about this? Either you give her to us, or I splatter your brains all along the wall. The one in black chuckled.
That's hilarious. Now I'm gonna go get Ziggy, and then we'll tie you up with her. How's that sound?
The one in the white hoodie smashed his shotgun down into the other's head. He fell forward, the back of his skull bleeding. The man then knelt down, setting his shotgun down before telling us.
Untie her.
We rushed over to Space, and I knelt down to untie her. I took out my machete and cut at the zip tie, snapping it.
Annie.
She fell into my arms, wrapping them around my neck as she cried into my shoulder. They had done something to her. Hurt her. Tortured her. Injured her. It had only been a matter of hours, but it was possible for them to have hurt her, mentally and physically. Maddie walked over to the one in the white hoodie and put him against the wall, pointing her gun at his back. The man was not scared nor hostile. I helped up Space, letting Maddie hold her as I turned to the boy. "Why didn't you shoot?" I asked in hushed tones. He sighed.
"Because I'm done working for these people. When I saw you out there, I had hoped that maybe I could get out of this life. I don't want to hurt any of you. I just want to leave."
"Then why'd you try to kill me?" I asked.
"I didn't try to kill you. I tried to keep you from getting shot out there,"
he said. I pointed my gun at him, handing his shotgun to Maddie. I didn't want to shoot him, but I didn't want to just let him go either. He didn't kill his friend, so I wouldn't be surprised if it was just a tactic to get us to lower our guard so he could kill us. "Explain before I blow your brains out," I told him, holding my weapon up to him.
"There's no time to explain. We just need to get out of here before they find out what happened,"
he told me.
"The Sakura are not someone to be messed with."
Maddie looked to me.
Should I shoot him or no?
"Please. I'll do anything for you. Just get me out of here before they realize."
Before I could make a decision, 2 cardboard boxes behind me burst open. The sound of gunshots echoed throughout the warehouse, followed by 2 screams.
I don't think Andrew gets the concept of stealth,
Spencer commented. "No shit," I told him, drawing my revolver. Maddie turned the corner and aimed her gun, watching as a man pulled a knife on Isabella. Quinn shot him from nearby, the bullet tearing through his leg. He hit the ground, and Quinn knelt down, picking up his knife and stabbing him on the head mercilessly. We stopped next to a large group of boxes, and I peeked between a crack, seeing Andrew sneaking behind a gang member with a knife. However, what he didn't notice was one sneaking behind him.
Shit!
Andrew hit the floor, the man stabbing a knife into his upper back. Despite this, he was able to pull out his gun and kill the guy behind him before killing the guy in front of him.
Everyone take cover! Do not come out if they're shooting at you!
He shouted to us through pain. Immediately, all the gang members pulled their guns, aiming at us. I ran out from the boxes and pulled the Colt, firing at them twice before being forced back behind cover. Spencer and Maddie took cover, Quinn and Isabella with them. Hunter made a mad dash across the battlefield, firing rapidly with his submachine gun. He shot the one that stabbed Andrew, before grabbing his emo friend and dragging his body across the floor behind a big wooden crate. Somehow, he had avoided being hit. Hunter knelt down and examined the wound. This was no place to treat that. If Hunter removed the knife, Andrew would die almost instantly. There was nothing to do but try to win the fight and get him treated back in the RV. He had to hurry up, though, due to the large amount of blood Andrew was losing. 2 men went for him, firing into the wooden crate with their pistols from behind an old conveyor belt. Hunter took the shots, the bullets tearing through the first layer of wood, but failing to penetrate the second. When they stopped firing, he readied his shotgun, firing twice with the pump-action weapon. One man was caught in the blast, his chest torn apart by the shell. I fired at the enemy from afar with my hunting rifle, taking out 3 before one of them began targeting me. The crate I was hiding behind burst open, and I was forced to run. I slid across the cold, hard ground, taking a bullet in the process. My knees buckled, and my body hit the cold, hard ground. The shot was painful, burning even. It was a graze, but it had hit a considerable amount of flesh. A scarlet liquid was pooling up where I laid, as I tried to reach out for my gun. I couldn't talk, just groan, as I attempted to grip the handle of my revolver. Just barely, I managed to roll over behind cover, and a short blonde girl stood over me.
You're gonna be fine.
Space said, with muffled words. All I could hear was ringing, and faint gunshots and voices. So far, we seem to be winning the fight, but not for long.
Watch out! They have grenades!
Hunter shouted. The leader of the gang ran into the fight, throwing a grenade across the room. It landed behind cover, and everyone rushed to escape, but it went off. Spencer was thrown to the side, slamming into a box from the explosion. Maddie ran to his help, Quinn laying down some cover fire with the other shotgun. Isabella was beside him, but was too scared to help out. Meanwhile, Spencer was sprawled across the ground, groaning in pain. He was alive, but the blast had knocked the wind out of him. Maddie dragged him behind cover and tried to hand him his gun, but he needed a few minutes to recover. A few minutes he didn't have. And we quickly realized we stood no chance. I was bleeding out, Spencer was in pain, and Andrew was stabbed. All at once, the shooting stopped. All the men stopped firing, and the leader stepped forward.
Everybody stop firing! All of you are outnumbered, so either lower your weapons and surrender, or we will kill you all!
Their leader shouted. Hunter was surrounded, 4 men going for him. He sighed and put his hands up, but stood in front of Andrew for protection. The knife was still stabbed into his back, and Hunter wasn't able to apply pressure to the wound to try and help. 2 men went for Maddie and Spencer, and she was forced to surrender. But 2 of us, Quinn and Isabella, hadn't been seen. They continued to hide behind a crate. 3 men went for me in space, taking her by the arms. I put my hand out to take hers, but she was too far. They dragged her away as she cried out, tears splashing down onto the floor. They threw her to the leader, who pulled out a large combat knife. She looked up at him, completely at his mercy.
May as well kill one for good measure.
I watched as he slashed open the top of her arm, splitting her skin open. Blood poured out of her wrist as she hit the ground, trying to hold her arm together. The man then pulled out a pistol for a mercy killing, aiming it down at her head. As the safety on the man's gun clicked off, a bullet blew through his skull. I turned my head to see Ryan, taking cover behind a conveyor belt, with a machine gun in hand. One by one, the men and women were gunned down from behind, only a handful surviving the ordeal. 12 bodies in total fell, only 8 managing to duck down without being killed. Slowly, I crawled across the floor to Space, who was sitting beside a crate, clutching at her wrist. I rushed to her aid, Maddie joining me. She pulled off her hoodie, wrapping it around her wrist and pulling it tight.
Apply pressure,
she told me, as a bullet ricocheted off the crate behind us. Quinn and Isabella ran out from cover, pulling out their guns and firing at the last handful of gang members. But after a few shots, Quinn's gun clicked, and he was forced to stop and reload. Isabella broke away from him, shooting at a few while paying no attention to the man on one of the stacks of boxes, a sniper rifle in his hand. A bullet smashed into her skull, her entire body going limp. Her gun fell from her grasp as Isabella's body hit the floor, a pool of blood forming under her. A single hole stood in her forehead as her eyes stared widely at the floor beside her.
Isabella?
Quinn turned to his sister, looking at her body in horror. His jaw dropped, and he stared at her cold, lifeless eyes, and he fell to his knees in response.
Isabella?
Andrew raised his gun, aiming it towards her shooter, who was moving towards the exit. He fired twice, but missed, the shots tearing open 2 cardboard boxes. I got up, pushing past Andrew, and racing out the door as fast as I could, and with a bullet wound to the ankle that wasn't very fast. I ran outside, unholstering my gun, only for the shooter to pistol whip me from behind, knocking me to the ground. I groaned, hitting the cold hard concrete as my ears began to ring in response. I felt a pain in the back of my head. For a minute, I just couldn't move. The man from behind tossed his gun aside, picking up my silver revolver and standing over my body. He then raised it to my head, preparing to fire, with an infuriated look plastered on his face.
This is my family, you son of a...
I rolled over to see blood burst out of his temple, splattering onto my face and jacket. He hit the ground with a thud, to reveal none other than Axel standing behind him, a black pistol in hand. The boy was standing over the body in shock, his eyes tearful and hands shaking. "Axel," I said to him as I slowly stood back up. "Axel." He ran to me, and I fell to my knees, embracing the boy. He dropped the pistol, and it clattered to the ground, falling beside the body of the fallen gang member.
I killed them.
I know, buddy. I held him in my arms as the others gathered around Isabella's body. Gwen stared down at her, and I could see him fighting back tears. I wanted him to finally realize he was not indeed heartless. But not this way.